Banned accessories in the NFL.
Despite the NFL being one of the most entertaining and successful professional sports leagues in the world, the league has gained a reputation for not allowing the players to have fun. This has come as a result of multiple rules put in place on things like celebrations and fashion choices that the league has deemed inappropriate for one reason or another. Today, we will break down some of the most notorious accessories that the NFL has banned players from using in their league. The first accessory we will cover that was banned from the NFL could have potentially changed up the on-field shoe game if it had not been blacklisted from being worn. 1. Yeezy cleats. While Kanye West has done himself no favors in recent years to aid his public image, in 2016, he was one of the most beloved celebrities in the hip-hop scene. Alongside the release of his seventh studio album that would be released that year, West would also break new ground in the fashion industry. Coming off of the back of a successful Yeezy Season 4 fashion show, West would also unveil a Yeezy football cleat. These were the hottest cleats on the market at the time, and only some of the biggest names in the league would get the pleasure of donning them. Both DeAndre Hopkins and Von Miller would both be gifted the shoes from Kanye himself, and the two stars would don the Yeezy 350 cleat in Week 1 of the 2016 season. However, Hopkins would end up being fined $6,000 for wearing the shoes. The NFL stated the reasoning for the fine being that they broke the rule of cleats having to have a solid base color. The cleats that Hopkins wore featured a black and white speckled colorway. D-Hop would go on the record to say that he would no longer wear the cleats unless West himself forked over the $6,000 that Hopkins would face in fines every game that he wore the shoes. Had it not been for the league intervening and finding any player that would go on to wear the shoe, it could have started a wave of players getting a chance to have custom-made cleats by their favorite fashion designers. Since the fines in Week 1 of the 2016 season, no player has gone on to wear the Yeezy cleats again, effectively banning them from the league. Up next is another flashy accessory that would cause some controversy and would eventually be banned. 2. Odell Beckham Jr.'s Richard Mille watch. When he was in his prime, Odell Beckham Jr. had a strong case for being one of the faces of the NFL. During his first 3 seasons in the league, Beckham Jr. was named to the Pro Bowl 3 times, won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, and the Overall Rookie of the Year award. After reaching global fame due to his incredible one-handed catch in a game against the Dallas Cowboys, he would quickly become one of the most talked about players in the NFL. Admittedly, Odell would at times play into his stardom and do some things that he knew would get his name in the headlines. One of these stunts would come during his time with the Cleveland Browns. In Week 1 of the 2019 season, Beckham Jr. would play the entirety of the game while wearing a $350,000 Richard Mille watch. While players have worn expensive chains during games in the past, this is the first notable time that a player has worn a designer watch, especially worth this much. Despite the flashy and expensive wrist piece, Beckham Jr. and the Browns would suffer a demoralizing 43-13 loss to the Tennessee Titans. He would finish the contest with 7 catches on 11 targets for 71 yards. However, Beckham Jr. would go on to outdo himself in the following week wearing either a Richard Mille 5601 or a Richard Mille 5602 that cost him between $1.96 million to $2.02 million. This watch was made mainly from a synthetic sapphire crystal, notably a very brittle material that could have easily been broken through the course of a game or even in warm-ups. Despite this, Beckham Jr. ran the risk and both of his watches would make it through the early stretch of the 2019 season unscathed. This game would go much better for Beckham Jr. and the Browns as they took down the New York Jets by a final score of 23-3. In this game, Odell would go for 6 catches on 10 targets for 161 yards and 1 touchdown. The touchdown catch would come on a game-breaking 89-yard connection. However, after his incredible game against the Titans, the league would once again step in and put an end to the fun. They would ask Beckham Jr. to refrain from wearing the watch, citing the policy that prohibited players from wearing hard objects. As previously mentioned, his watch was made from a very brittle material that was more likely to break if it made contact with an opponent rather than injuring the player. Shortly after being asked to stop wearing the watches, he took to Twitter to say, "If ain't one thing, it's another." The Browns head coach Freddie Kitchens was asked about the ban, and he was quoted as saying, "As long as they're going to enforce that with everyone, I'm fine with it. Let's just make sure it gets enforced with everybody." This is another very odd rule that the league enforced that put an end to a very interesting and risky fashion choice. The next banned accessory on the list would also cause Beckham Jr. to get into some hot water with the league. 3. Pants that fail to cover the knees. Wearing watches would not be the only time during the 2019 season that Odell Beckham Jr. would get into some trouble with the NFL as a result of his fashion choices. While the ban on his watches did not make a lot of sense, this decision by the league is even more puzzling. In Week 6 of the season against the Seattle Seahawks, he was fined $14,037 for neglecting to wear pants that failed to cover the knee area. In Beckham Jr.'s defense, he did wear high socks during the game that did leave most of his knees covered. However, this would not be good enough for the league. Once again, Odell would take to social media to voice his frustrations with the league bringing the hammer down on him. He posted a screenshot of his notice sent from the league letting him know that he was going to be fined. Along with the screenshot, Beckham Jr. would add a caption saying, "$14K for some pants that are not gonna protect me from anything. This shit is ridiculous." The official rule that led to Beckham Jr. being fined states that stockings must extend from the shoes all the way to the bottom of the pants, meeting at the knee. While this does seem like an oddly specific rule, it was put in place so players would have extra padding at the knee area. However, to Odell's point, shorts are not going to do much to protect him from an oncoming collision. If an opposing defender were to put his helmet into Beckham Jr.'s knee, there is still likely just as strong of a chance that he would suffer an injury whether his pants covered the knee or not. With Odell avoiding a fine earlier in the season as a result of his watches, this likely was a ticky-tack rule brought up by the league to get back at the star wide receiver. In this game, Odell and the Browns would suffer a tough 32-28 loss. Beckham Jr. would finish the contest with 6 catches on 11 targets for 101 yards. Since this incident, Odell has luckily been able to stay off of the league's radar when it comes to fashion choices that the higher-ups find to be offensive. The final banned accessory on the list caused one of the coolest and most loved pieces of a player's uniform by fans to be stripped from the game. 4. Dark tinted or designed visors. While the shorts incident would be the last time Beckham Jr. would face a fine from the league due to uniform choices, he would find himself being one of the victims of the NFL's crackdown on dark tinted or designed visors. Originally, the rule to ban this accessory was put in place for a very good reason. In 1998, the league banned these particular visors because it made it almost impossible for training staff to see a player's eyes to see if they were unconscious. With concussions running rampant in the league and at times being a life or death situation, this ban makes sense. However, the NFL has been very subjective on the rule and who they choose to punish for it. Once again in the 2019 season, Odell would face punishment for a fashion choice. In the same game that he wore his nearly $2.5 million Richard Mille watch, Beckham Jr. would also be forced to leave the game for a short time to change the visor on his helmet. After the game, he was quoted as saying, "All I want is for it to be fair around the league. If you're going to tell me to do something, do it for everybody else. You let people stay in the game on Monday Night Football with gold visors. Everybody else has tinted visors. You pull me off on 3rd and goal. All I want is it to be fair. I want to play football." Shockingly, some players still get away with having tinted or designed visors. However, more time than not, they will face some sort of repercussion from the league.